Have you face toward this way?
So this first lesson is going to be about the optimal shutter speed that everyone should know about. And that is that the 1/160th of the shutter speed is usually ideal for capturing sharp images with any type of human subject in them. So if it's a candid photo, you're documenting someone, or you're taking a portrait of somebody, 1/160th of a second is what you need to have. I don't care if you're shooting with a 28mm lens and you do the 1 over focal length. So say 28 is going to be 1/25th of a second, or 50mm lens 1/50 of a second. Even if you times it by 2 to have some safety factor, that would be 1/100. That is not going to cut it. And if you have IBIS, that doesn't do anything for the moving subject. That only does stuff for like camera shake. It doesn't help with the motion blur of anything that you're photographing. 1/160th of a second. Remember this, set this to your auto ISO banks. I promise you, you will get way sharper images if you do this, even in low light. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, it's gonna be this one. I wanted to take a moment to thank today's video sponsor, Squarespace. I've actually been using Squarespace for over 10 years. Their templates and easy to use interface make it incredibly simple to create and maintain a professional looking website without any coding experience necessary. My Squarespace website was an essential part of how I built my photography business. It allowed me to showcase my portfolio, share recent work on my blog, and ultimately receive inquiries from potential clients through my contact form. If you're one of those photographers relying on just your Instagram profile as the sole place to share your work and build your photography business, I would really consider making a website on Squarespace. You can visit squarespace.com/Reggie Ballesteros to start a free trial and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. The second lesson is low light does not equal bad light. You don't have to be afraid of low light. Usually I think of low light means you have to use a high ISO. High ISO is not bad, but bad light means poor quality of light direction or just poor light in general. You need to avoid that. Just because you can crank up the ISO or you have a Sony camera that is just magic in low light conditions, it does not mean you as a photographer have the excuse to accept bad light conditions. So that means lighting is coming from a weird way, you have really bad mixed light. That is your job as a photographer to manage that. What you have to do is learn to be able to look at the light sources, where they're coming from, and even if you have a little amount of light, being able to place your subject or place yourself to be able to photograph the best quality photo that you can in that low light situation. This happened a lot when I was doing getting ready photos in hotel rooms. You had to use low light and somehow find the good light direction. When the situation calls for it, you need to take out the flash and use a flash so that you can kill the ambient and create good lighting direction. This happened a lot in my receptions. I would take out the flash so that I can create good lighting that was balanced with the ambiance of the mood of the room, instead of having to force lighting up somebody with a candle from a table that's 3 feet away. That's impossible. Low light you can work with. Bad light should be avoided. The third lesson is to get comprehensive coverage of whatever you're photographing. And by coverage, I mean having multiple angles, having multiple compositions, having multiple framing and focal lengths used. In filmmaking, usually that means you have a tight shot, a wide shot, and a super wide shot. You can do this with photographing. So whenever you photograph anything, you want to get a little close, a little bit further back, and a little bit even further back to get the context of everything. And wedding photography taught me to get all this coverage of different framing, different angles, as well as different focal lengths for different type of compression, and being able to understand when to use each one and to get full coverage so that later on in post or later on when I need to deliver the photos, I have a lot to pick from. And I've taken this type of skill set even when I go on vacation or when I go out with my family. Sometimes I have a tighter focal length and a wider focal length so that I can get good coverage of whatever I'm photographing, and don't just stop on just taking one shot, especially if you're shooting in digital. Take 3 to 5 shots of whatever you're photographing and work the scene, work different lenses, because the coverage in the end is going to show your value as a photographer to whoever you're going to show the photos for, to create some type of diversity of that particular shoot, that day, that event, what have you. The fourth lesson is one that I actually haven't heard said on the internet very often. In order to find good moments, you actually have to listen for them. You can't look for them, you really have to listen. Feel the vibe of the room, listen to who's laughing, listen to who's raising their voice, listen to who's yelling, whatever. Being able to hear like the emotional peaks of a social space, even just listen for people coming into the room. They're probably going to say hello, shake hands, and hug if they haven't seen each other for a long time. These are things that I learned as a wedding photographer to listen for instead of looking for. I see a lot of street photographers listen to music when they photograph. For me, it's still a habit of mine to have my ears able to observe and hear my surroundings, because listening and being able to understand patterns of human behavior is probably the most important skill to get quote unquote lucky when you're documenting something that's unfolding that isn't rehearsed, that isn't gonna happen again. So people interacting, people crying, people saying speeches, people greeting each other, all these things happen just once. If you find yourself not able to hone in on the peak moments of something, even if it's a birthday and they're blowing out the candles, you have to listen to the song to know when they're about to blow out the candles. So practice listening and observing human interactions and just take note of the patterns. Your ear is going to be the most important skill that you develop, in addition to everything else. But for those candids, this is the one. You got to listen. The fifth lesson that I learned is that the great photos are made before I even bring the camera to my eye. Let that sink in for a little bit. The greatest photos that I made were made before I brought my camera to my eye. And that is because I could walk into a scene and I needed to observe, where is the good light coming from? Where are the lines? Maybe I had to deal with a very crappy hotel room or very crappy courtyard, and I was tasked like, hey Reggie, you're the professional, let's make some art. Right? So I had to work in a suboptimal condition, scan the scene so that my clients weren't bored, find the good light, find the lines, find the composition, find the frames, and think of a pose that would work well, and then just go for it. And all those things happen typically before I put the camera to my eye. And you'll realize that photography, 99% happens without the camera. It's you observing the world, interacting with subjects, placing them, interacting with light, and being able to put everything in this beautiful concert so that it actually works well together. And this last lesson kind of ties everything together is when all the photographing is said and done, curation is more important than editing photos. Being able to look at a set of 3,000 images, 30 images, and being able to pick out the best ones and which ones to share, how to sequence them, that is a skill that everyone needs to learn. In the days of Instagram, you only post one photo, but I think being able to think about what are the best 3 photos, what are the best 5 photos, what are the best 10 photos of this particular wedding, and how would I sequence them, what is the representative set that documents all the different high points, the beautiful points, the exciting points, the points that the client and the couple will like. You have to be able to build this skill to either think for your clients or think for yourself as your creative voice. And that only comes with practicing curation. Me and my friend used to say this all the time. You can make any crappy wedding look good if you only get 10 photos to represent it. You could pick 10 photos if you photograph 4,000. The rest of the images may have felt very bad, or you could have been battling with logistics and poor conditions all day, but you can pick out 10 photos and make that wedding look like it was hella good. That was what I did. I always tried to figure out, in this case, it was 9 photos. I would take 3 photos and make a triptych, and then I would do 3 different stories. And I would post that to my Instagram the day after the wedding. And that would help build my confidence around, the work that I can produce, the quality that I can give to my clients, and in general it practiced and it honed my brain to be able to pick out those good moments. But I'm curious to hear if you have any lessons from your experience, even if you're not a professional, even if you're just beginning. What are lessons that you think are valuable to any photographer of any skill level? I think everyone's advice here is welcome. Share them down in the comments, and let's help this photography community get better. And with that, my name is Reggie Ballesteros. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you loved it, subscribe for more.